We have folks from all over the nation here. Anyone to shout out their part of town, state?
Good evening, everyone. Hi,
Hi,
I'm Tara
Tara.
Adams in Richmond, Virginia.
Welcome, Tara. Thank you, Richmond. Michigan, I see Myrtle Beach. I saw Winchester, Tennessee. Hampton. Okay, Hampton. I hear that you guys have your homecoming coming up this weekend. Chesapeake, Virginia. Akankee. There we got folks flooding in still. We will get started in exactly 2 minutes, guys. Just trying to accommodate everyone that's coming in. Anyone else want to give a shout out, whether it's from their business, to their clients, to their families, to their location? Suffolk, Virginia. Newport, Tennessee, Chicago. Okay, I see you guys. Chicago, Park Ridge.
I want to say shout out to Fairfax, Virginia. It's Pauline.
Pauline, thank you so much.
Hello, this is Lolita calling from Upper Marlboro.
Hey now. I saw some Wisconsin on here. Welcome, Upper Marlboro. Sterling, Virginia. So for those of you that are not on the East Coast, this is 6 o'clock in the hour right now. So that's why I'm gonna try to keep it as upbeat as possible, because half of us are already thinking about our beds. But whereas others on the West Coast, you guys may still be in the afternoon peak of hours. And so welcome as everyone is coming in. All right, I promise you guys 6:02, and we are going to get started. Welcome everyone. My name is Martha Luriano. I will be teaching the session 15 class, which is Win the Seller. In terms of who I am, I have been in real estate now for 23 years. I am here from the DC, nation's capital, Washington, DC area. As of today, I continue serving my clients as a one-stop shop offering residential and commercial real estate. I am slowly but surely closing out my property management business. But that's who I am. So feel free to, let's have fun in this class. I pride myself in the more fun that we have sometimes, the more it gravitates and sort of registers better for you. Full disclosure, I am a fast speaker when I'm passionate about something. So if there's anything I do say that you're like, Martha, go back, I didn't hear it, repeat it. It's not a bother for me. I'm here to help. So with all that being said, we have a couple things that we want to go over. And now you guys know my background, right? I've been doing this for 23 years. That's what gives me the opportunity of being in front of you guys. In the last 4 years, I've been more focusing on getting more listings. My business has always been like 50-50, where I pride myself in like serving both buyers and sellers, but just being more intentional about where I want to put my attention. I've just been, able to really focus on getting more sellers. So in the past 5 years, my business has been 80% of listings. And so even more reason why, I have the honor of being in front of you guys. So if by chance any of you ever have any questions throughout the class, I invite any questions, because sometimes when you're bold enough to ask a question, you never know how you're helping your fellow mate that's on the call with us. Because sometimes we want to ask a question, but we just don't know how to interpret it, or we just don't know how to ask it. So please, please, please. We have a full class today, well over 100 people in here. So let's go ahead and get started and jump right into it. I like to always, open up the classes because I've been in plenty of these before. And sometimes it's like, I want to make sure that I am here to serve and help you guys. So is anyone willing to share maybe three willing to share what you're hoping to walk away from this class today? Because keep in mind, the topic today is Win the Seller. So with that, first three, floor is yours. Feel free to unmute yourself and say, what are you hoping to actually walk away from this class today? Cassia, I see your hand first, so by all means.
Yeah, just basically confidence, knowing what to present, how to present it to the sellers, and having the confidence and knowing that you'll more likely will get their listing.
Very true. Thank you so much for sharing that. And most times, confidence comes either from knowledge, right? Which obviously is the education that you're seeking to hear, hopefully get today, right? And hopefully that you're planning on getting. And then also practicing, right? So with all that, thank you so much for sharing. Confidence is one of them. Joe, I see your hand next.
Yeah, definitely want to know the type of conversations that I can have with the seller to convert it into a successful listing.
Okay. I'm sorry, to say that once again, you're hoping to gain what the key things of what
The
to.
key things of what I need to tell the seller so the seller is convinced to list their property with me. How to convince the seller to list their property with me.
Excellent. And one of the slides ahead is going to share with you what it is that sellers expect from the realtors that they're looking for. So hopefully that alone will help you. Now, after we go through that, if you're still like Martha, I still need more, let me know, okay? Tara, you're up next. Tara Hughes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yes, we can hear you.
so yeah, I was actually gonna say the same thing. So I'm actually doing a Bold. It's one of the other trainings, and I've just been working with buyers. And I actually, the goal is to get like, one of everything a week, at least one of everything, a buyer, a seller, and something under contract. And so I've been trying to talk to people to see if I can get a seller. And there's actually someone that said that he does want to talk about it. And I was like, oh crap, well now I got that and I have no idea what to do. So hearing that we were having this is like a godsend. Like you have no idea how grateful I am for this. Because I have
Excellent.
no idea what I'm doing.
No problem. Well, kudos to you for already identifying potentially a seller, right? And hopefully with the class at the end of today, you'll be able to walk away with knowing how to approach it. Now, granted, on that note, it really comes down to the subject property, right? Because I'm assuming that if most of you are interested in working on sellers is because most of you have had already the experience of working with buyers, correct? Right? No, not yet. Okay.
I'm still new, so I haven't worked with anyone yet.
Thank you, Stephanie. Thanks for your honesty.
Yep. 2 weeks in. Sorry. I'm about 3 weeks in Keller Williams, and I think several people here are too. So we just had.
You're
Yes.
fairly new. Okay. All
Yeah.
right. Well, welcome to the industry. Welcome. You guys will have much fun. It's a lot of fun. Things of what I can say in regards to it being so much fun is the fact that remember, there's always someone that needs to move. I'm not sure how often you have been approached by anyone on the streets, like, how's the market? Oh my gosh, is it a tough time? And all this. Now, mind you, I've been in this industry for 23 years, and having been in it for that long, I've experienced the '08 downfall, right? All these things, and having been in that '08 era, what life taught me at that point was that regardless of what's going on in the world, people have to move. And one thing that I think that what's kept me in this industry for so long is that I've realized there's so many things in common with life as there is in real estate. And so exactly that, right? That there's ups and downs, right? Don't listen to the chaos that's outside your door. Don't listen to the chaos that you hear on the news. Don't listen to the chaos because at the end of the day, you are a professional that actually has a license to help anyone move. Now, granted, if you decide to be one of those licensed professionals that sort of have too many boundaries where it's like, no, I just want to work with this select group, then sometimes we're the main ones that's putting ourselves in that small little box, if you will, right? But if you open up your horizon and you open up the opportunities of being able to just serve anyone, rather if it's a person that you don't want to serve for the rest of your career, but at least it's something, because I oftentimes see where folks are like, oh, I don't work with buyers, or I don't work with sellers, or excuse me, I don't work with renters. And it's like, well, that renter today is going to be that buyer next year. Now think about how much more equipped and knowledgeable you'll be if you're able to help that tenant today. So then that way you'll be in better position to represent that landlord tomorrow. And the same thing happens with, so in the walk, that's why sometimes as folks come into this industry, it's common that sometimes you're going to work with the renters because that working with the renters is going to prepare you to work with that landlord. And then working with that landlord is going to prepare you to work with that buyer, right? Because now you're going to understand what it's important for these property owners and what's important for them to understand what the main mechanics is to sort of keep a property up and running. So it's like phase by phase, right? If you open it up all the opportunities, there's business out here all the time. So I hope that that alone helped you. Carrie, I see that you have your hand up. If you want to unmute yourself, folks are still flooding in, guys. So I'm trying to sort of open up dialogue here and also encourage anyone that has any questions, any feedback, if any, in regards to the topic that we're talking about today as I start sharing screens.
I have a question while you're doing that.
Sure.
How do you navigate with dealing with people who I'm getting a lot of, can you help me find somewhere to rent? Nobody, since I'm still new, I haven't been approached by anybody who wants to buy or sell. And so I'm not even sure what the process is to help someone to rent. Do we look for them an apartment? I mean, do we, do the documents for them? Like, I don't even know what that process entails. Can you share?
Well, it depends on the jurisdiction that you're in to answer that question for you. So the person that runs your office would be the ideal person that way they can guide you about where to find, what to know in that particular jurisdiction. But across the board, the renting aspect of the license that of it all is the easiest in my opinion. The easiest being because there's so many more tenants out here than there is any other. And most times, just like men, let's be real. Sometimes you guys will go after this person because if you go after this person, then you'll get the attention from all these other folks. So at the end of the day, it's the same thing with real estate. What that means is the fact that if you're able to serve that tenant and you serve that tenant being open and wanting to serve them the right way, those would be your biggest cheerleaders. And guess what? A lot of those individuals will start bringing people your way. And the more people that come your way, the more you're able to identify, are they a true tenant, or is it that they just assume that their credentials are not as strong as, because a lot of folks sometimes assume that they don't have enough credit, they don't have enough money to buy. So it's like you want to position yourself where you get as much traffic coming your way, as opposed to being it the other way, right? Of chasing the business. You want to be in a position. So, the basic questions, because I know that most of us will encounter tenants more so than buyers and sellers, and I'm here to help you all succeed. I would recommend if you're open to working with tenants, here are some quick 8 questions you can ask, right? How soon do you need to move? How many individuals will occupy the property, right? Because that's where you're going to identify if it's going to be more than one adult or what have you. How many bedrooms you need to work, bedrooms and bathrooms, of course. What's the maximum you're looking to pay? Whatever that maximum of monthly payment, you multiply that by 40. And that will give you the minimum income that when they tell you, I want in this area and I need this number of bedrooms, then you should calculate, okay, so you want $3,000 a month, for example, then you calculate 40, then you should earn at least X amount of income. If they're like, oh no, my income is not as strong enough, then that's when you're able to walk them through maybe not 3,000, but maybe 2,500. Because you want to kind of syndicate it down. So by the time you're showing them properties, hopefully it's the top 3 that you're only showing them 3 properties, and it'll be one of those 3. And traditionally, you're the one that's compensated that first month's rent. But once again, that team leader in your office will be able to guide you. But I hope that helps. And of course, you want to identify if they have any pets. And by you simply doing that, the more people that you serve that way, the more transactions that you close, best believe your business will thrive, because renters are most times our biggest cheerleaders, because your average realtors don't want to serve them.
Okay. Thank you.
You're
for the
very welcome.
explanation.
Yeah, for 40 times the rent amount. So if they say that the most that they can pay in rent, my question is always, what's the most you can pay in rent? That's how I tailor my question. And that's when they'll say, oh, I don't want to pay no more than $2,500. I don't want to pay no more than $4,500, whatever that is. And then that amount is what you times it by X. by 40. Okay. So hopefully that helped. Thank you so much for for starting conversation on that end.
So just,
I will-
just curious, when you do the times 40, is that they need to make that gross or that net?
Good question. It depends on the listing agent. Most times they want to see at least gross. Sometimes I've seen that they want to see at least net. Because mind you, sometimes the listing agent can be working alongside a property manager, so that property manager would want net. So it's hard to tell you. That's why it really comes down to the jurisdiction. And considering
Okay,
that we have
cool.
people here all over the nation, every jurisdiction is going to be different. So I'm here in the DC market. Which in my opinion is one of the toughest markets, just because they, numbers are really big on in terms of what they look for on this end. But traditionally, across the board, I want to believe that a 600 credit score is what most people look for. They want to look for the income to be at least 40 times. And if you ever have a 1099 recipient, then they should treat it just the same way of how you would treat a buyer. Collect at least the last 2 years tax filings, because of course that'll show the average. I always even yeah. So it's those type of things. But thanks so much for asking that question.
So if you're working with the landlord to find a tenant for the landlord, and they would require background checks and stuff, so would you go? So is Keller Williams will Keller Williams help us with all the background checks and stuff, or do we need to find our own organizations? Or how does that work?
Traditionally, you need to find your own organizations, but again, if you go to your team lead or the person in charge of your actual KW office, they'll guide you as to what's common in that area.
Okay.
Yeah. You remember, you're a 1099, you're an independent contractor, so sometimes what works for this realtor may not work for that one, and so that's why you have the freedom of choosing whichever one. But if you haven't done it yet, of course, your TL will guide you to those that may be specialized in your particular office that can guide you further.
Okay, got it.
All right.
I
So let's
truly
go ahead.
appreciate that because I think in the long run, right now, people are unsure of their situations because of the government shutdown. So a lot of people are afraid to buy. So the majority of the contact I'm coming across is always, can you help me find somewhere to rent, to rent, to rent? And then maybe when things get better in a year or two, maybe they'll be ready to buy, and then hopefully I could be like their go-to agent. So that's why I was asking, how does it work? Because I didn't want to feel like if I'm wasting my time helping someone to find somewhere to rent and then get no compensation and or no long-term goal, like maybe a deal in the future with that individual.
No, and that's a very valid point, Stephanie. That's why I wanted to certainly take some time to help everyone, right? Because like you said, if we all are having to deal with so much in terms of serving our individuals, that sometimes it turns out that that person just can't buy right now, or for whatever reason, that person just can't do what they originally sought out to do. But yet, you being that licensed professional, it's our job to help them do whatever it is that now is the right thing for them to do, right? So to your point, I'm happy that you asked that, because I'm sure that it'll help most people on this call, because renting is the way to go, right? Especially in an uncertain market as we're in right now, right? We're licensed professionals. Our job is to help people relocate. And the more that you're opening up your mind, the more you won't be in the situation where you feel like maybe you're lacking, right? When I first started 23 years ago, I was closing 14 rental transactions on a monthly basis, and that's how I made a living. Now, mind you, I was a dual career agent, so I didn't really have to, but I was just so eager to learn. So that's why I'm happy to provide to you guys whatever it is that that I've just shared with you. Notice that Chris Williams just offered a website, Joe, that he uses. That's actually a really good one I've used as well. But because we have folks from all over the nation, I'm being reluctant about databases that may not work on your end, or may not be allowed for whatever reason on your jurisdiction. So just be mindful of that.
Yep.
So let's go ahead and get started. Notices, remember that you must comply with TC for any federal, including the calls, the texts. Make sure that you guys are always checking the do not call list, right? While Keller Williams Realtors has carefully prepared all materials, we do not guarantee that about their accuracy or make any express or implied warranties about the information. Keller Williams Realtors Inc. may change the materials at any time without notice, so these materials may contain hypothetical, examples, exercises meant to illustrate aspects of what is financially growth and investment models. So we'll go through it, but just be mindful that, of everything that these notices are making one aware of. These materials and examples are provided for informational purposes only, right? The whole goal here is to simply educate you guys as best as possible, understanding that these presentations can be modified at any given time. The commissions are not set by law or practice, as we all know, which is the reason why certain conversations we're not going to have, because we have so many different jurisdictions, counties, states on this call this evening. And so with all that, just proper disclosure to make you guys all aware. Okay, remember the fair housing warns about the buyer letters, videos, and photographs about may lead for fair housing violations. It's important to educate consumers about fair housing laws and talk with your broker about submitting buyer letters. In terms of warnings, when sending commercial email messages to the recipients here in the U.S., you must comply with this Can-Spam Act of 2003, which requires an email message to provide the recipient with the ability to unsubscribe, opt out, and receive future commercial emails. So if by chance you are enrolling your clients into like those newsletters, always make sure that they have the right to unsubscribe. Okay, as well as the AI disclaimer. If by chance the information that you're portraying has been pulled from the AI, artificial intelligence, should be reviewed for accuracy and reliability, as there may be errors, omissions, or inaccuracies. So remember that we're in a day and age now where most people are relying on third parties to obtain information, but even more to share it out loud. So if by chance you're ever about to promote and or blast something, just make sure that you have done your due diligence to make sure that the information that you are portraying is actually accurate. The copyrights, everything on here, right, by law, KW has to disclose all these. So just making you aware. For those of you that have done all these classes, kudos to you, because you are doing the right thing, right? KW, well, they do a wonderful job with offering these constant trainings, both during the daytime and now in the evening. And the topic that we're talking about today is in regards to winning the seller. Here's a quote: "While leads are vital to your sales business, seller listings are critical to your ability to build it to its highest level with the lowest cost and highest net." Right, our very own Gary Keller was the one that portrayed that particular comment. As we start off on this class today, these are the key points of what we're going to be going over. But again, remember, I want to make this as fun and engaging as possible, and even more as helpful as possible to you all. So notice that we're going to be talking about the A sellers, about how to get the appointment, about considering how you are presenting yourself to potential sellers with adding in like a pre-listing packet. We'll dive into what these items actually mean as we go through it, but these will be the topics that we're going to mainly focus on today. Now, jumping right onto A qualified sellers, right? As we know, what is an actual buyer? A buyer, as we know it, is a willing and able and capable buyer. The definition of what we classify as a Class A seller is a able, ready, and willing seller that is able and ready to list their property within the next 14 days. We're hoping to be able to go over all of the 3 listings, right? Reminding you that as you continue working to get leads, right, then you'll be able to gain more listings throughout it all, and then eventually being able to leverage it out. With seller listings, right? Seller listings mean marketing opportunities, right? Being able to, what we always say, take territory. Take territory, perhaps as a neighborhood that you've always inspired to work in and specialize in and be that neighborhood specialist, right? And seller listings offer you that opportunity of being able to do exactly that, right? You have more time and more control of your time by being an actual listing agent. Seller listings maximize your per hour compensation. And it's all about volume, right? Your TL, not since most of you guys, to my understanding, are new. Remember, your TL or someone in the leadership in your actual office, they have the database that if by chance you're like, I need to make $100,000, next year, what have you. KW has that office, which your team lead again, or someone a superior in your office can guide you where to find that. That if by chance you're like, I need to make at least 100,000. and yet I know I want to work in this neighborhood, or yet I know I want to work with this type of client. They have that database that in order for you to net $100,000, and they'll actually tell you, well, that means you need to go close X amount of transactions. So if you didn't know that already, please know that you have that tool in your office. Now, granted, you may have to go to the leadership in your office to get it, but just I would suggest dive into it. Because oftentimes, it can get a bit boring when you're like, I need to get a transaction. I need to get a transaction, right? But if you realize that I need to get a transaction because it ties into what I said I want to do for this year, right? Make 100,000, for example, make 200, whatever it is, 50,000. Everyone has their goal, no big or small, right? Everyone has their own personal goal. But the point is that when you identify what that number is, take advantage of that tool that we have in-house that can help you understand what that means for you and your business. So what I love about it is that not only does it highlight how many transactions you need to close, but if you're new to the business, then it also highlights your conversion rate. What does that mean, right? That you can have 10 prospects in front of you, but how easy are you able to convert that prospect into an actual appointment? Now, granted, the more knowledge that you gain, the more confidence you'll gain, the more easier it'll get for you to maneuver that conversation and handle that conversation for you to be able to not only turn that to an appointment, but also get an agreement, right, out of that transaction and hopefully get that closed transaction. So that conversion rate, notice that it's common that whenever you're new to it, your conversion rate may be 50-50. And the more that you continue practicing on your scripts, the more that you continue practicing on what to say when you do have that potential client in front of you, then you'll be able to your conversion rate is going to rise. So when it says volume, I wanted to break that down to you on how you actually have that database that can help you understand what it is that you need to go after, right? So one of you, I think it was Kesa, that mentioned it, the fact that, if the goal is to get at least one transactions on a weekly basis, how cool will it be for you to understand that this one transaction is actually tying me into that annual year? Sometimes we even think about it, my 5-year goal, my 10-year goal. So be able to really dive into the tools that KW offers that is really made for you to succeed, right? Is really made not only for you to close on a transaction tomorrow, but for you to really make this a true business, right? And be that pioneer in your area, to be that preferred realtor that most people will look out for. Number 5, with seller listings, you are on the front end of pricing, right? Properly marketing seller listings will bring you more business. We'll talk more about what that actually means. Now, here are the actual 7 steps of what it takes to service a seller, right? The first is, of course, getting the leads. Do whatever it is that you have to do to make leads. Now, remember, getting leads is different for everyone. This is where I recommend for you to identify what is your strength. Is your strength making calls? Is your strength going to networking events? Is your strength, that you really love to volunteer over here, and yet just by you volunteering over here, somehow you're always gravitating people towards you? Identify what that strength is, because it's okay to say that not everyone is great at phone call. Not everyone loves to make phone calls, right? Not everyone loves to go to networking events. Not everyone loves to do that. But the cool thing is that it starts with you. And the more honest that you are with yourself, the more you're able to identify what that is for you. And then that's how you can go and seek business. Where do you find networking events? I think that it really comes down to, who do you want to serve? When I first started in the business, because I'm Hispanic, what drove me to going all in for this business was realizing how underserved my Hispanic folks were. I'm Hispanic. I speak it fluently. It's just I was born and raised here in DC, and that's that's what you hear. But the point of what I'm getting to is that that's what kept me in this business for so long, was realizing how underserved my folks were. So that helped me realize that I want to serve my Hispanics. Now, by me understanding where my Hispanics are, then that'll guide me as to where can I find the networking events. Right? So for example, if you're one that you want to specialize in, I want to work with first-time home buyers, then where do first-time home buyers go? Right? Now, granted, so much can fall under that, but the more strategic that you are with your thinking, the more it'll lead you as to where you should go and network. is all I'm getting to. If you don't want to work with first-time home buyers, but you want to work with investors, then you want to get yourself in rooms where, then more than likely they're already existing property owners, and now they'll be at a position where they now can go and invest. What does that look like? Maybe sometimes here, like in the DC area, or even in the state of Maryland, which I'm also licensed in, sometimes you can go to the Chamber of Commerce. Sometimes you can go to the associations that doctors go to, right? You can go to certain, so Eventbrite is one that can help you understand where networking events are. But in other words, if you identify who you want to serve, then that'll open up the libraries of where you can go to network, if that makes sense. So like Tia says, finding your niche. But I want to kind of break it down to help you realize that it really comes down for you to realize, for you to sort of be true to yourself about what your strength is. Where do you want to go? How do you want to maneuver it? Because obviously by you being, you're identifying your strength and you being authentic with it, then you'll automatically gravitate towards your type of people, right? The pre-listing phase it talks about your phone ringing, or to Kaiser's point that she met an individual that looked like they could be a potential seller. This pre-listing phase could be a couple things. For me, it's asking my generic questions. Sometimes if I hear that they're talking to many realtors, then my pre-listing packet can also look like I'm dropping something off at the house. So it's something that's going to make you stand apart from the competition. Sometimes it could be that nice, authentic conversation that we just had. I think that as realtors, we overthink what our position really is. We are problem solvers. The more that you realize that you are that, the more people will spread your name around, and they will be your own cheerleaders that you don't even have to worry about lead generating. That is, thank God, what's kept my business going all these years, was that I realized that when people come to you is because they have a problem. And that's even more of a reason why in certain classes you hear, just be quiet, let them talk. Because the more that you let them talk and the more that you listen, the more you're unraveling what that problem is. You'd be surprised as you continue serving more people how sometimes they don't even know how to articulate what their problem is. But so that's why you have to listen and just let them vent out, because more than likely by the end of that vent out that they've done with you, then you'll understand what is hurting them. And then that's how you can then move in that conversation on addressing what the solutions are. And the more that you can do that to individuals that come your way, best believe that's when they'll say, where's your agreement? I want you to be my realtor. Oftentimes I feel like people they look at us like we are salespeople. And I'm sorry, I pride myself in saying one cannot, there's nothing you can say to a person to make them go towards this house. It's the house that speaks for it. But if you're able to discover from them during the consultations what is important to them, and then that's what you show them, then you're technically not selling them anything. You're simply helping them solve that problem that they've expressed to you. Now, granted, buying their dream house is not a problem. But in other words, it's a pain point. It's their motivation. And the more that you're able to uncover that and you're able to meet them then that's what I'm saying. You're not selling yourself. You're not selling the property. You're simply doing your part, and that's what's going to make folks cheer you on and spread your business like no other. So the pre-listing packet is what that means. In terms of the pre-listing, if it's a phone call, right, and over time, everyone's going to have their own style, right, and it's okay. It's what works for you, especially if you're being authentic. But for me, the way it works is that the phone rings. Now, if it's someone that I don't know, I've never met from Adam, I'm going to try to keep it as short and sweet as possible, because I realize that my strength is getting in front of people. It's something about when I get in front of people that I can feel the energy and I can understand and I can adjust. I give it all because I guess I've been doing this for so long. I've been in customer service all my life. But the point is that my strength is getting in front of people. Sometimes people's strengths could be doing it over the phone. But in other words, I want to get in front of them. So my pre-listing questions may sound something like so. What's the address of the property? How many bedrooms does the property have? How many bathrooms does the property have? And I'm saying these things, and if you want to take notes. The address of the property, how many bedrooms, bathrooms, the property type, If I hear that it's not a condo, or even if it's condo, I'm going to ask how many levels does the property have? Then I'm going to ask, is there any garages? Then I'm going to ask, is there an existing mortgage on the property? And if so, how much do you currently owe on the property? And I'll ask, are you the only owner on this property? And that's when you'll hear them say, oh, no, it's not me. It's it's also, you know, so and so. So with all that, then then that's when I'll come back to that. But in other words, that's where I sort of ask, is there anyone else that's sort of part of the decision making? And in the end, have you done your research on your property already? Because most people now, thanks to technology, have. And from what you've studied and what you've looked at, how much do you think you can sell your house for? So that's when I'll shut up and listen, right? After asking all these questions. What I'm hoping to get is obviously the address of the property, but understanding the layout. And then I'll close out with saying, if you were to rate your property, how would you rate the condition? Would you say it's needs work? Would you say it's move-in ready? Or would you say it's everything is completely renovated? That's what works for me with helping me get the answers that I need, because I need those questions. I need the answers to those questions. So now I know how to do my research in terms of the comparables that I need to do. So when I come to the listing appointment, I can come with something of value. By me understanding what they're hoping to get, now I understand that they said they wanted 500. But yet when I did my research in that area, it's only selling for 300. Now, granted, I don't know these individuals, so I need to really come prepared to not show them what Martha says, but show them what the market says. In addition to me now getting their mortgage amount, then now that helps me then bring forth what's called a seller net sheet. Oftentimes, most people are always hung up on, oh, 6% this or 3%, wait, you're charging 4%. And they're making up all these percentages as if it's so much more. But if I'm able to interpret that, hey, in this area, right, that's what the comparables are going to help with. In this area, the properties are selling for X. You said your mortgage was X. This seller net sheet now says that you're actually walking away with $250,000, for example. Right? Now, we'll talk more about the phases of all that as we get to it. But in other words, I'm just trying to bring back the importance of those questions. Okay, so in other words, most times when you bring that seller net sheet to that listing appointment, then they're not really focusing as much on that percentage that you're charging them, because they realize they're actually possibly netting more than what they want. Now, granted, if it's quite the opposite, that they realize that they're not netting as much as they hoped, then that's when we're able to then have other type of conversations with them to see what we have to do, if any, to position them to get that 500,000 as an example. Wilbert, you wanted to add something?
Yes, the question I had was about the mortgage, because a lot of times when I speak to sellers, like when I ask them, "Hey, do you sell a mortgage on your property?" Most of them get offended, and say, wait a minute, what? Yeah, most of them get offended and just be like, "Man, like, what do you need to know that for?" This, that, and the third, and so I just wanted to kind of, I guess, review the importance of asking that particular question.
Got it. Now, when you're talking, thank you so much for that, because you're absolutely right. Sometimes if they don't know you from Adam, they are skeptical about it. But at the end of the day, it's you're not hurt. So when you're talking to individuals, if you're realizing that you're going to get that reluctance, then save that question for last. Because in other words, by you asking the right questions up front, then hopefully you're building rapport with them, depending on how you are asking them, right? Because you should be asking them in the way that I'm here to help you. Now, if in the end you save that question and they ask you, why do you need to know that? Well, Mr. Seller, the reason why I'm asking you all these questions is because I want to come fully prepared to help you the day that we meet at your property. Now, what this mortgage payoff is going to do is that in addition to everything, all the materials I'm going to bring, I'm also going to bring what's known as a seller net sheet. Are you familiar with that? What that is, Mr. Seller? No, what is that? Oh, okay. Well, not a problem. So after I've been able to walk through your property, after we've been able to, I've been able to share with you the presentation and everything that I like to go over in that listing presentation, and after we understand how you're planning on going on the market, then I'll actually be able to bring with me a seller net sheet. This seller's net sheet will actually include that mortgage payoff, so you can actually understand how much you're going to net. You follow me? And that's when oh, okay, got it. That's why you need it. So most times when you break it down to them as to why, then they'll be more open to sharing it with them, because at the end of the day, you're there for them. You're not there for anything else. And notice that you're not asking for anything other than the mortgage amount. It's not like you're asking for the mortgage account number, the mortgage company, or anything like that. So sometimes feel free to just add that in. I'm not asking for anything other than the mortgage amount, but it's only so I can provide to you as much as material that's going to help you and your family make the right decision. Especially if you know that they're trying to sell this one because they need to buy the next one, then that's even more reason. That's the angle that I would go about it. Is the fact that, to my understanding, you want to sell this property because you want to buy the next property. Is that correct? Yes. Oh, exactly. So that's where the seller net sheet is going to help you, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, is by me being able to bring forth the seller net sheet to include the existing mortgage on there. Then now you'll actually be able to understand how much you're actually going to net. So now, as you're seeking to find your next property, then as you can imagine, that's not only going to help you and better position you for that next one. So in other words, the more that you are interpreting it, that it's all about them, the more that you'll be able to more than likely gain their trust. Thanks for asking that. Stephanie?
Yes. So, is there like a standard or generic like seller net sheet that you can put a link in the chat so we can see what it looks like?
It's on the MLS. So thank you for saying that. On the MLS, mind you, we have folks from all over the nation here, so everyone's MLS is going to be different. But those of you that are here in the DMV area, I think it's even Tennessee included, and down south, the East Coast, I think we all pretty much have the same bright MLS. You would find it under the financing tab, and then it says seller or financing or listing tab, one of those two, and it says seller net sheet. That's literally the title of it. Tia said you can even Google them. I've never personally Googled them because I've just been using Bright MLS all these years. What I appreciate about Bright MLS is that when you add in the address of the subject property, it'll automatically populate the taxes and all the typical fees that will go in that jurisdiction. So just an FYI, because we have folks from all over the nation, that's why I want to kind of keep it as generic as possible. Now, notice that we've been talking about the pre-listing phase so far. Now we're going into the listing consultation. The listing consultation, once again, go into that appointment after you close shop on getting that appointment. What do I have to do to stand apart from all the other realtors that more than likely they're going to interview? Okay. And we're going to talk about that in slides ahead. Servicing and marketing, right? In that listing consultation, hopefully it will include the services and the marketing on how you're going to position their property to outcast everyone else. And then obviously how you're going to work about it when you start receiving offers and how you're going to do your best to negotiate for them. And then of course, contract to close, right? Contract to close in my eyes is not only getting the listing appointment, but it's also getting the actual sales contract to close on the transaction. And then the post-close systems, like what are you doing after you have helped that person successfully sell their property? Any ahas so far? I've said a lot, but any ahas anyone want to share? If not, we can keep going. Let's go. Get the appointment. Keys to converting your A sellers. Respond right away to any lead inquiries. You always want to do that, right? Facts always show that the first realtor that they talk to is more than likely the one that they're going to move forward with. So if by chance you're on a lead database or what have you, you want to capture that lead as quickly as possible. But yet again, have your customer service hat on, not your salesperson hat on. Get valid and complete contact information, traditionally with the name, full name, first name and last name, telephone number and email, that suffice. Sometimes when you start asking for personal addresses, that's when they'll be reluctant. Determine their motivation to sell. So that's when, again, you start asking, and the more that you're doing these things, the more you start knowing how to maneuver and ask the right questions. So with that, it's all about setting the appointment, right? Creating that time or date. Now, when it comes down to getting an appointment and setting in a time or date, everyone has their own way. I've heard it that people are like, you tell the client, oh, I'm available Thursday or Friday from 11 to 12 so you can make yourself look busy. Even to this day, to each his own. I'm not down talking to anyone that does it. If that's works for you, for me, it just doesn't work that way. I want to make myself available to when they're available. So for me, I'll say, right? Especially when I identify that it's more than one person, I'll say, please get back with your group, rather it's one person or 5, and let me know the next 2 days and times that work for all of you. And that way I know that all the decision makers are going to be present. And at the end of the day, I'm also being that more lenient with their scheduling as opposed to having them go out their way, right? Because I want to be as available to them as possible. It's not about being desperate, it's about being available. Because sometimes if it's 5 people across the table but 3 of them can't make it, I'd rather it be all five of them, because oftentimes if you only meet with 3, nothing is going to move forward until all 5 of them are on the same page. So I'd rather be accommodating to when all 5 of them are available, so then that way they're one step closer to sign here, print hard. So just an FYI, in other words, I wouldn't be surprised if maybe you have to take some classes. What works for others like myself, it's identify the next 2 days and times that work for you guys, and you let me know. Denise?
Yeah, if you when you're trying to make that appointment, I'm just thinking about what you said, trying to be available for everybody. Sometimes it has to work for you as well as them, because you might have a job, outside, or you might not be a full-time real estate agent. And so everybody has to sync together, and everything. So that way you can still be flexible,
Absolutely.
keep your job, don't get in trouble with your boss.
You want to keep that.
And at the same time, you want to, work where everybody can come together at one time. It's just, it's not always going to be, well, I'm going to be available for when they're available, because you might have a full-time job.
And you're absolutely right, Denise, and I appreciate you bringing that up. If for those type of scenarios, then I would recommend then you say, hey, I'm available on Thursdays, Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays. Please let me know after talking about it with everyone on your side. Let me know the next 2 days and times that work for you from those dates. So if you're a full-time employee or whatever, and your time is limited, like Denise said, then you're the one that should close the call saying, hey, I'm available on this. And you should give them at least 4 to 5 different days. Now, granted, sometimes they're going to say, I'm not available this week. So that's what I'm saying. Hopefully when you said Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, whatever it is because it's not only this week, it's also next week. But in other words, you just want to show that you're there for them. Because oftentimes I have seen it where folks will say, oh, well, I just went with this person because you weren't available on that day. And so that's what I'm saying. That's why, to me, I found more success with locking in appointments and getting deals by sort of interpreting it as in, let me know when you guys are available. But to your point, Denise, for those individuals that may have a little more sort of limited of time, then close that call with addressing when you're available and then have them address it with them, but give them at least 4 to 5 different times or days. Right. So Tuesdays, Thursday evening, Saturdays, what have you. Hi, Dylan.
Hey, I just had a question.
Sure.
I was wondering, when do you move the people from your contacts into your opportunities where you cultivate them?
Excellent. I would say when it's a two-way conversation. If you reached out to Mr. Al Smith today and Mr. Al Smith has not responded back to you, then to me, he's still a contact. But the moment Mr. Al Smith responds back to you saying, hey, I've been meaning to, but I haven't been able to, what have you, whatever that is, but now it's a two-way, then that's when you move him into an opportunity. Because I'm assuming that now that he's responded, now you understand what kind of opportunity he's going to be. Rather it's a landlord, a tenant, a buyer, or a seller, right? Because when you're creating that opportunity, you need to address which one of that he is. Does that answer your question?
Yes, that does.
Perfect. Thank you all so much for your questions. I invite them all. This is the page. One of you, I think it was you, Joe, that you asked me a question and I told you we were going to jump into it when you were like, Martha, I just don't know where and how to even start. This is what sellers are expecting from their real estate agents. And this comes from that every single year, by the way, NAR, National Association of Realtors, they provide to us realtors, and for anyone that cares to know, the profile of what home buyers and sellers are actually looking at. And I really love, because they really dive into asking particular questions to buyers, particular questions to sellers, particular questions to people all over the world. And it also even shows the demographics, geographical, all these insights that as a real estate agent is so good for you to know about these things, because that's how you know what the latest trend is or what buyers are expecting, for example, or what sellers. So these questions that we're about to go over and these answers that we're about to go over comes from the 2021 profile of what that home buyer as well as home seller was expecting from their real estate agent. So when asked, hey sellers, what do you most want from a real estate agent? 21% of them said, I need help with pricing my home. 20% of them says, to help the seller market help the seller market their home to potential buyers. 16% of them said to help sell the home with a specific time frame. 16% of them said help the seller find ways to fix up their home to sell it for more. So this goes back to one of the questions that was asked at the start. What am I even supposed to say? Know that on command under designs, then if you type in listing presentation, if you haven't created one already, that would be your guide on how to create your own listing presentation. What is a listing presentation? The same way if you go to any professional seeking for their services, you give them more respect when they give you some sort of presentation, if you will. And so what I'm saying is that don't feel you have to start from scratch, because command already gives you a template. So once again, if you go to command, you go under designs, then you type in listing presentation, you'll find a generic one. Now that you understand where and how you can create a listing presentation, now these are key things. If I were you, if you don't have one already, include this. Now, I'm not saying include 21% of buy, right? I'm not saying include that, but it created in a way of how it can be received well by a seller. So in other words, if 21% of them are telling you that they're expecting you to help them price their home competitively, then that would be one of the services that you're able to offer them, right? List seller, if you were to hire me, one of the services that you definitely should expect from me is that I'm going to help you price your home right? I'm going to help you sell your home within a reasonable time. I am going to help your property stand out so much so we can attract as many possible buyers as possible. So in other words, interpret this for that, and that's where you can create it in your listing presentations, in hopes that as you interpret it the right way, but yet you're talking about the topics that most sellers across the board are expecting from the real estate agent, then that can move you in the direction of you being a selected seller. Now, as you see, 27% of came under other. I wonder what that other means. Perhaps as we continue diving and people asking questions and we just brainstorming together, we can help each other identify what that other 27% looks like. As I mentioned to you guys before, when I asked the pre-listing questions, and I asked them, hey, how would you classify your property? Would you rate it as it needs work, it actually is move-in ready, or it's actually completely renovated? Is because a lot of times, your typical seller, they possibly been living there for quite some time now. And as one lives in a property quite some times, you don't really realize some work that needs to be done to it. So you going into that appointment possibly with a list of licensed contractors could possibly help you seal the deal. Now, mind you, as real estate agents, you're not supposed to recommend Uncle Bob from down the street. You're only supposed to recommend licensed and insured contractors. Now, here in my part of town, I'm in DC and I'm in Maryland. And the state of Maryland alone offers so many different counties. And so that's why, as a licensed real estate agent in Maryland, then I need to understand that if I do business in Montgomery County, then a general contractor is completely different from a home improvement contractor. So these are the type of responsibilities that us as real estate agents have, that as you bring forth and you start creating your list of vendors, it's your job to, one, do your research to make sure they actually have their license and insurance. And you might actually also want to pick up the phone to see if they want to offer a unique service of If I like, in other words, if I'm building my book of vendors and contractors, I'm going to call, hey, general contractor, I'm creating my book of vendors for the new year as we're approaching it. And I wanted to ask you, right, do you have your license? Do you have your insurance? Because I would love to add you to my book of vendors. Would you be okay with that? And if so, what is the name, contact number, website, if any, that I should promote in my book? In addition to that, help me understand what line of business do you do? What's the list of services? And sometimes they'll say, oh, I'm a master electrician, or I'm a master plumber, or I do it all. Great. For those that do it all, hey, let me ask you, if I were to come across an individual that I've realized that they have equity in their home, right? And remember, equity means that the house is worth 500. They only owe $100,000 on the mortgage. So they got $400,000 for equity. Sometimes that could be plus or minus that. But in other words, Mr. Contractor, if I came across a homeowner that has sufficient equity in their home and they don't have the money to pay you right now to get the property up and running, but yet I realize that they do have equity, would you be open to allowing them to pay you at time of settlement? That is the new wave of business. Has been happening in the past 3-ish years, where if sellers have equity, they won't offer it to everyone, but only if a person has equity. And by you being that front runner, right, of knowing these personal informations about the seller, then that's how you know, right? Is like, hey, if I present someone to you that has the equity, but they just don't have the money in their pocket right now, could you do the work and they'll pay you at time of settlement? And then let them, you know what I mean? And so the point is that as you building your book of vendors, because you're in really good position right now, let me tell you, to start running with this in the new year. So think about it. That'll be one of the features that these sellers are hoping to get from their realtors. That if you're that reliable realtor that could not only offer them what they're looking for, but I can offer them the resources that can help them get the most bang for their buck, don't you think they're going to choose you? So what you're doing is that you're positioning yourself to be that selected real estate agent. In addition to that, you're also being that real estate positioning yourself so you could be the realtor that everyone's talking about. That, man, I didn't even have no money, but she was able to educate me on the fact that this contractor can do the work for me and I can pay them at time of settlement. Now, granted, just because you identify that that person has $400,000 in equity doesn't mean that they want to spend all 400, but you want to help them save money. But the point is that you're bringing it up to the GC to see if they want to be one of those individuals. So then that way, if they're like, no, I need money to be paid at time of doing the work, then that's fine. They're not in that resource column that of the contract that can actually do the work. You present that seller to that person for those individuals that you know they have the money to do the work, if that makes sense. Building confidence and trust, right? By you uncovering the person's needs, their problems, and all that fun stuff, then you're building one thing at a time, their trust. And normally, when you have their trust, that seals the deal right there. So just like a doctor should never walk around without their telescope, right? Whatever that thing is. I'm sorry. As realtors should never walk around without an agreement.
Stethoscope.
Thank you. See, I was just making sure you guys were paying attention. That's all it was. But anyway, just like as a real estate agent, you should never walk around without an agreement. So if you're working with a tenant or a buyer, you should walk around with that buyer-tenant agreement. If you're going to a listing presentation, you should walk around with that listing presentation. Now, the more that you get comfortable and confident in asking the right questions in that pre-listing tab, the more you'll understand if this person is a potential landlord or if they're going to be a sell listing. Because remember how we talked about, don't turn your backs on any business, because that landlord today could be that seller tomorrow. That tenant today can be that buyer tomorrow. So in other words, until you get comfortable with asking the right pre-screening questions, then I would recommend bring forth both landlord listing agreement, which in other words is the rental listing agreement, as well as a seller agreement. Because it's like sometimes when you're getting in front of, if it's more than one individual, that's when you're able to uncover if they really do want to sell it, or sometimes like, I really don't want to sell it, I'll just turn up and rent it. And if you don't have that listing agreement with you, then it's like that is a potential loss there, because they may not come back to you, or in this time lapse they may go to someone else. So I'll always recommend to always bring forth a blank listing agreement in both rental as well as a listing agreement until you feel confident enough that you know that they're going to go with you regardless. The 7 steps to be able to hopefully, help you close more transactions, right? You want to show the benefits as to why you're the person that they should select. And hopefully with some of the ideas that we've talked about so far, can help you position yourself to be exactly that. Right. You want to take back if you got to, this take back close, I was up in the air in terms of how to even interpret this. But we can dive more into a couple slides and then we'll come back to that. You want to position yourself and the more practice that you start getting, you're able to go from that negative to the positive close. Because mind you, most times it's going to be negative when you're approaching them because sometimes they're in the problem and they're looking for that solution. And that's how you're able to turn that problem into that solution. And as you're focusing more on the solution, then obviously that's the negative to positive. You'd be surprised how if you position your mindset on what's the problem that they have and what is the solution, and you focus on the solution, what one doesn't realize that you're doing is that you're now actually creating hope to sometimes when we're drenched in our problems, most of us, we sometimes lose it. And you're that light, they're that beacon of light that not only are confirming that you're going to be there with them to help them solve it, but you're that beacon of light to help them instill that hope that no, it's actually not over. I'm here with you and we're going to get this through together. The more that you're able to approach those scenarios like that, the more, let me tell you, you'll be more sort of, well positioned of being able to not only get that listing agreement, but being able to hopefully get some more cheerleaders from referrals that those individuals will be sending your way. Give them what they're looking for. Trial close, assumptive close, tie downs. When a question is asked, answer it. If by chance you don't know the answer, it's better for you to be honest and say, you know what, I really don't know it, but I will look into it and I promise you I'll work to get you an answer by tomorrow. It's better for you to be transparent instead of saying something that you really don't know and then they catch you in the lie. Because once they catch you in the lie, that's normally when they won't trust you. When an objection comes up, address it. If there's an objection, the more that you prepare yourself for that listing appointment, the more better you're positioning yourself to be in a better position to be able to address any objections. So some of the common objections could be like, hey, because that house on 123 Main Street, that sold for $1 million. And you over here telling me I can only sell my house for $700,000. No, well, did you know that the reason why they sold it for $1 million is because everything was completely new? Whereas yours, you haven't done any work to it in the past 10 years. So you see how you're not talking down on them, but you're addressing the objection. So the more that you're able to do your due diligence up front and going into that appointment, the more chances you are of being able to address the concern or the objection that they're giving you. Any aha so far? Even if it's not an aha, any feedback, any questions that's still uncertain that I can answer for you guys?
I guess as far as the aha moment, that line about the equity in the property where you can, I mean, again, it depends on the scenario. As far as if that person has a nice amount of equity in their property, and that general contractor is willing to capitulate to those terms and wait until settlement to get their payment, that was something I didn't know about.
Excellent, good. I'm happy that helped you. Got it. Anyone else want to share any questions or concerns so far that that can help you resolve any situations you may be dealing with? Bianca, so feel free to unmute yourself and ask.
Hello. You were saying a few minutes ago for the listen appointment, you said to always bring or always have available the listing agreement, and I think you said, was it the rental agreement?
Yes. If you're able to pick up on that the person is not certain if they're going to rent it or sell it, then bring both. Or if they maybe want to do both, first come, first serve, because they can do both.
Okay, so all right, so listing agreement, okay, I got that. We basically essentially be helping them sell. Now with the rental agreement, is that for us to be able to help them find a renter? Is that more so on the lines of like the property management side, or?
So you can help a person rent a property without offering them property management services. So when we were just talking about, that's a good question, by the way, when we were just talking about the book of vendors, then property manager can be one of those, but mind you, whenever you're recommending a professional to anyone, I always consider recommending at least 1 to 4, 1 to 3.
Mhm.
I personally still to this day do that because I don't want them to say, well, you're the one that told me to work with Mike. And it's like, no, I actually gave you Mike plus 3 others, right? So even more a reason why you always want to position yourself where you're recommending licensed and insured individuals and property management. So in other words, you can approach a rental listing and say, I don't offer property management services, but I can actually help you find that tenant. Now, mind you, as a real estate agent that decides to represent landlords, mind you, they're coming to you expecting for your guidance. And I'll come back to the rest of the slide. Let me second. So in other words, here, for example, whenever a property is built, I'm trying to remove the share. Bear with me. Okay. So here, for example, whenever I'm helping someone rent a property in whatever jurisdiction I'm in, that I, as a real estate agent, should be able to understand what it takes for that person to get a rental license. Now, in some places here, if the owner lives upstairs or vice versa, the owner lives downstairs, then you don't have to get a rental license. But as a real estate agent, I would recommend for you to do your research in your area that you're going to be working in to find out what does it take for a property to get a rental license. If you live in someone said Chestertown, Virginia, you could just say something like that, rental license in Chestertown, Virginia. So you can do your own due diligence to find that out. So in other words, as you approach these listing appointments, it's better for you to be prepared for all types of scenarios that can come across. And so it's not only about helping them sell, but also positioning yourself to helping them rent. Because if it turns out that you've identified what the problem is and the solution is that they can go either way and you're able to close either way, you're able to help them, then you're winning.
Well, what's
Gotcha.
So in other words, yes, the rental listing agreement, and you want to find out here, for example, if the property was built prior to 1978, then you have to get a lead-based paint inspection. And there's different types of lead-based paint inspections. So these are the book that would fall under that book of vendors. Now, I identify 3 lead inspectors in your area that can offer that certificate to you. You go ahead, Bianca.
Oh no, you answered my question. Thank you.
You're so welcome. You're very welcome. Any other questions or anything that anyone would like to address?
Or can you go back to the rental license? You was talking about something about rental license. What is that?
So in order for you to help somebody rent their property out, it's not only about helping them find that tenant, but it's also about helping them position their property so they can be legitimate. In most areas, you cannot take a tenant to court. It don't matter if they haven't paid you rent. It don't matter anything. You can't take that tenant to court if they haven't had their rental, if you don't have a rental license. The rental license simply means that the property is up to code to allow a person to be able to live here safely. It's just same thing on the commercial side. You have to get a certificate of occupancy, or even residential when the property was first constructed, certificate of occupancy. Rental license falls under that. So that's what rental license means, is just do your research in the area that you work in and the county that you're choosing to work in to find out what does it take to get a rental license. You said someone just asked a question. You said, could someone, I'm sorry, someone, a message, can you talk about what the seller is responsible for paying when they sell their home, if any? That would tie down to closing cost. Closing costs comes out to what buyers traditionally pay as well. So closing costs can come up to the taxes, if any, if they haven't paid taxes for the property so far this year. They normally have to pay for transfer and recordation tax because, of course, the seller and the buyer has their own transfer recordation tax. They have to normally pay for the commission, the seller commission. Across the board now, they no longer have to pay for buyer agent commission, but most of us are still calculating for something towards a buyer agent. They have to pay for the title company fees. They normally have to pay for their realtor's flat fee. The water bill in our area sometimes can be escrowed. HOA, if they haven't paid the HOA or condo fee, if by chance the subject property offers that. And that's just generically. Now, granted, every property is going to be different. But if ever you have that buyer that's like, how much is closing costs going to be? We always just recommend calculate 3.5%. Yes, well, I'm not talking about 3.5% as down payment. I'm talking about if someone is ever saying how much is traditionally closing costs, then you could just say 3.5% for a buyer. For a seller, I would go as hard as 5%, sometimes even higher. But that's where that seller net sheet comes into play. That's the power of what the seller net sheet is that it covers all those generic fees. Any other questions, Umberto?
I have a
I
real
also
question.
include on my
Karen,
presentations.
I'll come back to you. You were saying, Umberto?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
That's
I took me a little longer to unmute myself. I also included in my presentation. I just explained it very simple. You're supposed to pay for all your utilities up until the day you close, and then I include taxes, HOAs if there is any, um, title, and the photographer because I use a photographer that sometimes includes the drone or not, depending. So I tell them that it is important that the first thing that anybody's going to look at is going to be the pictures online. So that creates a big or the biggest momentum, and it has worked for me. I'm not a top seller by any means. I am myself more focused on flipping. That's what I do. 50% of my time is focused on flipping. But I tell my clients when I first talk to them, if I was able to make my money after landing here with $300 on 1988, you can make it too. So when I tell them a little bit about myself, that kind of inspires them and creates the trust for them to give me the listing because I charge 3.5% for the listing. And I include the cleaning and the landscaping on that 3.5 because when they're selling, the last thing they care for is cleaning and landscaping. So it just so happened that I also have a commercial maintenance company myself. So the cleaning and the landscaping is not much of an expense for me, but it shows that by the end of the transaction, I was able to do a lot more than the average John Smith Realty, because it's a big difference when you present and say, okay, when are the pictures coming? Friday, okay. The landscaping and the cleaning is done on Thursday and Wednesday. Then by Friday, we have the perfect home for the photographer, and then it's coming live the following three days from then. So then I tell them not to worry about the landscaping anymore once we're under contract. And then when we are about to close, the landscaping comes back again, takes care of everything, picks up the trash. We don't leave a single bag of trash in the properties behind. And the second cleaning comes, and that's all done. Sorry to take so much of your time.
No, it's okay. Thank you so much. Because what you're doing, Umberto, is that you clearly offer an array of different services, and that is what's helping you stand apart from your competition. So when you get in front of the listing appointment, you're helping them realize that you're not just only able to help them with X, but you're also able to help them with X. Now, granted, maybe across the board, and so in other words, use Umberto's background there, how he has created sort of an empire where he is saying to the seller, hey, not only can I help you with this, but I can also do this and this and that. Now, I'm not saying copy and create, but obviously just realize that there's so many different ways of how you can position yourself. And how you can stand apart from your competition. when you said about the 3.5%, Humberto, I love that, right? Because in other words, the question was what's included in the closing costs, and he very well told you. Sometimes, you know, if some people charge 4%, for example, for the listing, then with sellers saying, hey, why do you charge 4%? Then normally you can just go into it, oh, because that includes the photography, that includes the cleaning service, that includes this, and that includes that. So just realize that the way that you interpret what you're offering them really matters. And to them, 4% actually might not sound as high when they realize everything that's actually factored in. Some of us actually include a menu of services, right? That actually offers the sellers to choose that if you want this service, and that's my fee is going to be X, but if you want this and this service added, then that's the reason why I'm charging you X. So closing costs in general can include a variety of different things. And as you see, each realtor has their own. Umberto, I'm gonna come back to you because I know that Lobsang has been waiting for a while now. Lobsang, can you, Doma?
Hi, yes. You just brought up something like using the home equity if the property needs to be renovation. My question to you is between the using the home equity and the taking the renovation loan. So between two of those, what do you suggest?
Say that once again. I understand what you're saying in terms of when the home needs work, but what was the question?
Instead of using the home equity, or you suggest to taking a renovation loan for the property?
The reason why, so mind you, if you get an additional loan, so if it's someone that's in front of you and they're like, I need to sell it yesterday, then home equity is like you're pulling money out, and mind you, home equities on average takes 30 days to get. And so you're positioning yourself where now you're opening up a new loan, and you're also delaying the process. Whereas you could just get the contractor to come in there tomorrow and sell and hopefully it should take them, let's just say, 3 weeks to fix the property up. And then instead of waiting to get the funds in 30 days, then now you're simply going to get the property listed in 3 weeks. So you see the difference?
Okay, if I take the home equity, so I don't have to wait until the property is closed, is it? Because I know when you take the renovation loan,
you're getting the home equity so you can get the money to do the renovation. So why pull more money? Because in other words, normally getting the home equity, you're going to spend more money doing it that way than just doing the renovation loan through the contractor.
I mean, as a buyer, if I can use the home equity, so can I use the home equity like before the closing, or I have to wait until it's closed? Because
okay.
when you
so help me understand. So we're talking about two different. Maybe I'm misinterpreting something. I thought you're talking about a seller. So you're saying if a buyer is buying a property that needs work,
yes,
they're pulling the home equity from what? Another existing property?
Yes.
Yeah. So the benefit of pulling the equity out from a home equity is that traditionally to pay that back is going to be more cheaper than getting a renovation loan.
Okay.
Because mind you, a renovation loan is where they're going to give you the loan to buy the property and do the repairs. Now, because it's a renovation loan, then the interest rate is going to be much higher than a home equity loan.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. I hope that helps. I hope that helps. It's still generic to me, but in other words, I'm trying to articulate the difference, right? So in other words, to buy an investment property, using home equity loans is easiest across the board because that's less steps that one has to take, as opposed to you doing a renovation loan where it's like identify the subject property, then you got to bring in the GC for them to give you the outline of repairs. Then that outline of repairs then needs to be presented to the lender, and the lender now needs to qualify you for the purchase of the property plus those loans. So in other words, it's all normally more money than just pulling the money out of that home equity. I have to head out early. Perfect. All right. Any other questions or anything else that anyone wants to address? Karen, I know you've been on standby, so thank you so much for your patience.
Oh,
the floor is yours.
You're welcome. Just really quick, I just wanted to go over something. You mentioned that one of the responsibilities of the seller is that they are to pay the title company fee, correct? Because I always thought they have to pay the title company, but I always thought it was the buyer who pays when they purchase the home. They pay the title company.
So remember that the title company is doing two jobs, right? They're doing the job for the seller of transferring this property out of their name, and they're doing the service for the buyer to get this property at zero. So when it comes in down to the buyer's name, so that's why it's two different services, that the buyer has their own closing costs with the title company and the seller has their own closing costs with the title company. So that's why traditionally when you see that final alta, you'll see the seller side and the buyer side each having their own fees towards that title company.
Okay, and the last question, I just wanted to because I was writing down some notes. So Umberto, he had mentioned that to justify his commission, which he pays for the cleaning service, the photographer, and the landscaper. So that's something that we can do also, because I do know of, or I've heard of some agents, they would suggest to their clients, I would suggest that you clean up the place. I would suggest that you do some landscaping. Whereas Umberto said, I will take care of it for you. So
Now,
I just want,
and not to cut you off, but this is why we have to keep this topic as generic as possible, because here in the state of Maryland, if you're offering more than one service to a seller, you have to, by law, share with them a document that's known as affiliated business, arrangement. So you have to make them aware. Now, that's what works for Umberto, Karen. You don't have to do what Umberto is doing. But at the same time, if you do it, then one, follow the laws per your state and your jurisdiction, and notice that he is simply being an entrepreneur, that instead of just being one service, I can actually offer all this to you. And sometimes the more business that you offer that landscaper, that you offer that contractor, that you offer this, sometimes you can actually gain some income because you refer the business out. Now, it may not be in this case, just using Umberto as an example. It may not be Umberto the one that's being the landscaper, but Umberto is that entrepreneur that's conducting the dots. And so it just follow the jurisdiction that you're in, because in some places you have to share to that potential seller that you are part owner here, part owner there, part owner there, right? So here, for example, you have to disclose who and all are paying you your commission. So if you're getting a commission from here, you're getting a commission, you have to disclose that. So just make sure that you follow that of what state you're in, Karen. But yet that's what works for Umberto, and clearly he's being successful at it. And I really love that he offers all these different array of services that your typical seller is going to need anyway, because in other words, he's making it easier for them to, and being that one-stop shop for the client.
okay, I do like that idea. And I was going to just say that I am located in Maryland, and then for one of my sellers, I came out of my pocket to pay for the photographer. That's the reason why I was asking about that. But thank you.
You're so welcome. You're welcome. Yeah, a lot of times, the way you interpret it, because I've everyone is different, but it's about how you interpret it to the client. Because when they're questioning you as to why you're charging so much when your competitor only told them X, then they're going to wonder. So that's why I think it's always best for you to have that menu of services. So then that way, sometimes when they're talking to you, they might want to run it by someone else. And if you don't have that menu of services, then that someone else can now start bringing all this friction, right? But yet the fact that you were professional enough to offer a list of services, then that's what makes it. Now, mind you, on this menu of services, I'm sure you guys have seen it over time. You'll see that like most companies do it, where it's like you want the rate to be 3%. Then this is a basic general, services. You want it to be 2.5%. This is the services that's going to be included under that. You want it to be, if it's going to be 4%, you want it to be 5%. Then that's what the menu of services is. So if you're thinking about doing something like that, I would recommend create that, and then that way the client can realize that they don't have to get that landscaping service, and that way it's not going to be 5%. It'll be 4%, for example, or whatever the case might be. But I would recommend definitely, if you're going to be offering more than just generic, to have the highlight of what is actually included in the list of services you'd offer them. Eve, welcome.
Yeah, so when they went back to the photographing, that's something that I thought should be automatically included, because I never charge my clients to say, oh, you have to pay for the photos.
Well, remember, everyone has their right of how they want to choose to run their business. And remember, everyone on here is independent contractors. So some folks are just saying what works for them, right? Some folks, yeah. So I appreciate Evie sharing that. But just know that, everyone has the rights of how to do it. I'm gonna go back to the presentation now so we can finish up on it. We pretty much are almost done for the most part, just so you know. This particular slide, which I'm sure you guys have seen before, that the more intentional you are and the more focused you write, like KW always says, what you focus on is what expands. So obviously the more focus that you have, the more models you'll start creating, the systems that we were just talking about, that menu of services, for example, that's part of that system. Remember that KW on command also offers you the unique topic of like smart plans. So then that way it's like one of those set it and forget it systems. But in other words, the more that you're on repeat and process, the more you're able to continue breaking through ceilings. So some of which, tonight, for example, we've talked about breaking through ceilings and working with more landlords and working with more tenants and working with more buyers that I think that's what keeps this profession that we've all chosen to be in more engaging, is that there's always ceilings to climb, ceilings to break, and ways of how we can continue growing, right? So the pre-listing packet that we talked about, it was just more about exactly what we talked about, right? It was pre-selling, identifying the person's motivation, identifying potentially any objections that they may have, and that'll allow you to be able to approach them, hopefully with all the confidence, by you coming fully prepared because you've done your research as to what is going on in that area. You've done your research as to what the seller net sheet is, for example, and in that way, those type of preparations, if you will, before the actual appointment will guide you and hopefully helping you feel more confident in what you're saying. Right. Of course, it'll save you more time later by doing the research up front, doing that consultation. Give me 1 second. And tackling common obstacles. And of course, by you being able to portray all that, it actually does state your value. So in terms of will you review it in the listing presentation, like, again, when you dive into the designs and the commands, you'll be able to see about the listing presentation. The pre-listing, you want to keep the pre-listing packet as simple as possible. I think that what brings value to a pre-listing is being able to articulate who you are and how they should prepare for the meeting that you're going to actually have with them when you actually do the actual listing presentation. So that's what this whole pre-listing packet criteria refers to. This pre-listing packet, you should be able to find it under that command. Notice that right here at the bottom, it actually shows you the URL where you can actually find this whole pre-listing packet. You want to customize it to creating the actual client's name, hence the reason why when you're doing that and locking down that appointment, you want to ask them for their actual name. Which, most times by you actually getting the address of the subject property, then you'll be able to do your own due diligence in terms of cross-referencing who public records is stating that the seller name is to what you were told over the phone. Seller consultation, right? This is where, when you're locking down the appointment, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I look forward to seeing you tomorrow at 6 p.m. Right? Just want to make sure that all decision makers will be present. Right? Decision makers don't always have to be sellers. Sometimes it could be their trusted confidants that they want present. And make sure that you always arrive. They always say that if you plan to be on time, you're going to be late. So if one of the tactics that was taught to me many years ago was that if the appointment is at 10 o'clock, then you want to actually start walking to the front door by 9:58 in hopes that by the time you're literally knocking on the door, it's 10 o'clock. So one of the first things that you say out of your mouth is like, yep, we had a 10 o'clock appointment. And, like in other words, insinuating that you're right on time. But now obviously how you want to portray it is on you. But in other words, it was like, one of the little small things that really make a difference later on to help them realize just on how on point you really are and punctual you are. Hey, Eve, I see that you're asking a question. Stacy, you're up next. Eve, did you want to ask something? Oh, okay. Stacy?
Yeah, is there a recommendation on where you do the listing appointment? Because you said knocking on the door. Do you do all of them at the home?
I do it at the home. I like to see the property. I know that there's, yeah, I like to see the property because the property, by me seeing the property, it helps me, one, give better price suggestions. And two, most importantly for me, it helps me understand what kind of buyer I need to find my seller.
Okay.
What that means, for those of you that have represented buyers, right? Whenever you start working with buyers, even for those that haven't been able to just yet, you'll notice that it really comes down to what kind of financing your buyer has. So mind you, obviously a buyer could be a cash buyer, a hard money lender, or the traditional financing, which is normally for owner occupants. It could be the FHA, the VA, the conventional. In my opinion, of those three, the FHA and the VA are the most strictest of them all. So in other words, if I'm going to a listing appointment and I like to walk through the property before I sit down with my sellers, so then that way, as I'm walking through, I'm asking them, hey, did you know about that? Or are you planning on doing that? Oh, no, I'm not doing anything. I'm selling the property as is. But yet I see that this 5 staircase steps, right, doesn't have a handrail. If I see that the bathroom doesn't have an exhaust fan nor window, and so if I see certain things, then I know I cannot bring forth an FHA buyer because that appraiser was going to call that out, and my seller has already said they're not fixing it. So that's why I personally like to walk through my property, because it, one, helps me understand not only the price, but also what kind of buyer I'm supposed to find my client. Now, that is how I feel that it helps us stand apart from our competition, is when we really educate ourselves not only on the property, but also on the neighborhood. I myself work all the way, I've always worked from Frederick, Baltimore, straight down to DC. So in other words, I'm familiar with the neighborhoods and the pockets that really make a difference. That the house can be as beautiful as possible, but the block can really deter. So for me, that's why it's important for me to be able to walk through not only the property, but also the neighborhood. So then that way I can evaluate after visiting what the competition looks like. And then that's the reason why, you know, properties always sell in the 90 percentile of the list price of what I suggest because of that. Now, I understand that some of our competitors don't do that, but I pride myself in doing that. And that's what I feel like makes me, sets me apart from my competition, because I'm doing my client a service of, it's not about me finding you a buyer. It's about me helping you find that right buyer to get you that much closer to settlement.
Have you ever, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. I was going to say, am I answering your question?
Yes, you did answer my question. I was going to ask next, have you walked away from a seller after having gone to the home and seen things that...
I've walked away only if we've addressed the problem and we've addressed the solutions, and they're still not wanting to do the solutions.
Okay.
Because at the end of the day, I'm not going to put myself in a situation where I'm going to end up being the bad guy when we've already talked about the solutions, and for whatever reason, you're refusing to accept that.
And
Now,
then the house
granted,
doesn't sell.
yeah, exactly. And then the properties don't sell, and now you're bad naming my name, and it's like, what? Well, we talked about this. So those few cases, I have done that, but even more of a reason why I'm able to pick that up on that pre-listing call, so if I can understand the personality type that I'm about to walk into. Because if I realize in that call that I'm walking into an analytical type of individuals, then I better bring all the facts and all that I can bring to help that person understand my point of view. Because oftentimes I feel like we fail at not being able to meet that person on how they naturally are, and then we get mad at them for not seeing how we see it, and it's like, no, we didn't do the right job on addressing it to them. So for me, that's what that pre-listing phone call does, is that it helps me understand the personality type that I'm about to go in front of, so then that way I can best prepare myself for that listing appointment.
Thank you.
Of course. Thanks for asking. Cassia?
I just want to say thank you so much for the recommendation of finding the listing. What is it? The listing. Oh my goodness.
A presentation?
Presentation on command. I just went through it. It's beautiful. It is like a step-by-step process, and looks like we can edit it, right?
Yep, exactly. You customize it according to your own style. Yep.
It is amazing. So thank you so much. I think that's going to be a long-term resource. I really appreciate it.
You're very welcome. Thanks for confirming it and validating that it actually looks decent and you can
Yeah,
customize it. Thank you so much for those of
yeah,
for
and
those
actually
individuals in
your
the back.
name. Yep. So your name is actually included on there. So as soon
Mhm.
as you sign into Canva, your name is automatically embedded in that presentation, which is so cool.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for that.
Sure.
All right, guys, so we are almost done for today, right? In terms of the listing presentation, things of what we've already talked about, right? You know, how to go in, position yourself to go in. I would always recommend that you can't go wrong with going into a listing appointment with the sales comparables. And mind you, when you do sales comparables, biggest take is make sure you include closed transactions, sold transactions, things that have actually sold in the past 6 months. Why? Because that's what appraisals look at. Oftentimes people ride on, oh no, because that house down the street is on the market for $1 million, but it's been on the market for 300 days. No one's buying it for no $1 million. But now the house on this side of the lot sold for 500,000, right? So if you focus more, I try to always find at least 5 to 8 closed transactions, and I focus really on the closed transactions for me to be able to give a price suggestion. Now, granted, I'm now comparing it to my competition, and to see how I can position the property to the competition. But when I'm walking into that listing appointment, I want to talk about what has actually sold, because if it's still on the market, clearly something not going with it. So I want to focus on what has been successful, and that alone will help you position and give better of a price suggestion. Now, granted, that's why I'm going into that appointment or asking that pre-screening question, how would you rate the condition of the property? That's where it's going to help you, because if you learn that it's a complete rehab property, then that's the sold comparables that you should be focusing on, those that are completely rehab. As opposed to a property that actually needs work, then you need to only focus on those that need work. Now, granted, if they tell you, oh yeah, no, it's all right, I just haven't done anything to it, but everything just works just fine, but yet you haven't replaced the kitchen since 1970, then you still should classify it as a property that needs work, even though it works just fine. Because at the end of the day, today's buyer is going to be calculating all of that when they're considering if they should submit an offer on it or not. So in other words, that's why asking that pre-screening question will position you on what comparables to bring. Knowing the mortgage amount is going to position you to bring that seller net sheet based on the comparables. And now you have now mind you, when you do your research and you do the CMA, your average price, let's just say, is $350. So you can use that average price as the sales price for now. So when you actually sit in front of that seller and you realize you can actually get them more than $350, then you can let them know, oh, the numbers are actually going to be higher, because I actually just used the average of these closed comparables that I'm showing you now. Hope that helps. Your needs come first. This is how I normally like to start my presentations, right? That it's all about them. But mind you, I start the presentations after I have walked through the property. But when you guys customize and do your own listing presentations, you'll see how that page is automatically inserted in there. Let's do something where, so everyone on here can say it. Say these words that's on the screen, guys. Let's say it all at once. And if you want to unmute yourself so we can all hear you, by all means, guys, we're almost at the end. But let's say it, guys. You ready? Ready, set, go.
I am knowledgeable and
caring,
caring
and
and
the best agent
for
for
these
these
clients.
clients.
They will
Appreciate my
expertise
expertise and preparation and choose me to represent them
to
sell their home.
Sell their home.
Their home.
Thank you, guys. We sound like a broken record, but we did it. The whole point was
That's
to make
the
sure
aim.
that you guys are up. We are almost to the conclusion of our class today. And so I wanted to just remind you guys that you guys are the experts. There's a reason why they called you guys. There's a reason why you are in front of them. Make sure that you meet them where they are. Identify what their problem is. Identify what their motivation is before you hang up the phone, after you've locked down the appointment, and then come fully prepared to that appointment. And so remember, you are the expert, not them. And that's why they are calling you to help them. So make sure that you come fully prepared. And hopefully the more prepared that you are, the more research that you've done in terms of what has closed in that area, what is actually working in that area, what's about to come in that area. That'll give you the confidence that some of you mentioned up front, that you were concerned about, well, I don't know what to say and all that. By you understanding what the problem is, then your focus should be the solution. And that hopefully, and if you don't know what the solution is, then that's when you can do more research about what's happening, what's about to happen, understanding what their next steps is, why are they selling it, because they now need to move over here. So just focus on them, nothing about you. Oftentimes people, us realtors, we focus on us and we forget it's not about us, it's about them. And you'll notice that as you turn your mindset more about the client, how you're able to start creating raving fans about your service. Remember, there's opportunities everywhere. One of you guys had asked me about when is the appropriate time to transition it from the from a contact to an opportunity. I think that was a wonderful question, and I think that it's when it's a two-way conversation, right? So just make sure that you're always updating every stage that you're in, because this database is built to remind you of the task that you're supposed to be doing next. The listing walkthroughs, again, everyone has their own style. I find favor in once when I walk in through the front door and acknowledging my gratitude for them welcoming me in. I like to tell them, hey, I have a presentation to show with you. I have a couple things that I brought with me, but before we do that, would you be so kind to walk me through the property? Sometimes the question will be like, do you want to do it by yourself? And I say, no, I want you to come with me, because I want them, mind you, by them walking in front of me, then they're helping me realize, oh, don't pay attention to that wall. Oh, that stain right there. It was because the roof was leaking, but I've repaired that. So you're actually just taking notes. I take notes of everything I'm seeing. If it's a gas stove, I'm taking notes. If it's a wood burning fireplace, I'm taking notes. If it's a wood burning fireplace, hey, when was the last time you cleaned that? Does it even work? So you're taking notes. That's why you want them to come with you. And in that way, all those notes combined will help you understand overall the condition of the property. All right. The handwritten notes, those handwritten notes really still do work. They say if you don't have anyone to call, then you should be creating at least handwritten notes, right? Think about back in the day when I first got in the industry. At that time, mind you, technology was not where it's at now. So our way of getting business was putting our name tags on. Everywhere we went, gas station, metro station, it didn't matter. Put your gas station on. Some of us even got creative by turning our
They're mixing curls.
some of us even got creative by putting our name tags upside down in hopes that somebody would catch it and be like, oh, your name is upside down. And you're like, oh, you were paying attention. Hey, by the way, my name is. So in other words, in 2025, handwritten notes still work. People do appreciate to be acknowledged. People do appreciate gratitude. People do appreciate a simple thank you card, because everyone's on the go nowadays. So it's just the small things that really do matter. This is the QR code. I hope that I was really helpful for you guys. I hope I get positive reviews, but either way, I'm grateful that you were on this call thus far. And I really hope that, everything that we've talked about today really did help you in your business. Remember that for every dollar that we all earn, there is KW Cares, which has really helped a lot of people in our worldwide. That's part of KW when tragedy happens. Especially in the recent fires that California, for example, had. It was KW Cares that really stepped in even before Red Cross came in. So every dollar that we earn, if you guys can make it a habit of being able to give back to KW Cares, because what it does is that they give back to us, God forbid, if we're ever in this episode of a time of need. So just kind of wanted to remind you guys that the organization that you have chosen to be with is all about helping each other out, not just about, closing a deal tomorrow. And so just make sure that you guys are always staying on top of all the latest classes and all the latest, next ventures that KW is up to, because they pride themselves on being sort of always ahead of the game. And so this is sort of one of the things that they're doing right now. So if you capture that QR code there, it'll be able to guide you as to what this KW Next Gen actually stands for and what it's about and what they're working on. With all that concludes the end of our class, and I wanted to sort of close up dialogue as we close up shop here, to invite any other questions, any other concerns, any other things that you're still, sort of questioning. Feel free to, open up the floors. For those of you that are good and don't need to, no need to stick around, not unless you want to hear the questions. But thank you guys so much for joining me. I hope to see you guys next time. And thank you so much. Thank you, Dane. Thank you all so much for your positive feedback. But again, I'll open up the class to you guys. Anyone has any questions or anything you want to address with me before?
I do.
Thank you.
I have a question.
You're sure. That's Stephanie. I'm here.
So you were talking about the listing presentation in Command, in Canva. Can you share your screen and show me where that is? I'm in command and I don't see it.
You see
And
designs?
I'm also a new agent, so I don't really know where I should be looking for the listing presentation. I'm in command.
And then
To get
go
to the
on the left
Canva.
side. If you're on command, let me see.
One more thing too. You can talk to your, I guess your market leader, marketing leader, and ask them about the Michael Lewis marketing website, because you can find the listing presentation on there as well, and the buyer's consultation on there too. It should give you like a login where you can log into it to get all the stuff from there.
Exactly. Thank you so much for that.
It's called Michael Lewis Marketing. It's part of, join the KPP. But I never used the one on Canvas. I think that Michael Lewis might be better for her.
Here's a screen, and this is command. You're on here now, right? This is where you are, Stephanie?
Yes, this is exactly where I am.
Okay, so this is where you want to click on designs.
Oh, that's why I didn't see it. Okay, design.
And that's where you'll be able to type in whichever one.
Okay, that's what I needed. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome. Hi, Dorothy. Welcome.
Hi, how are you?
All is good, thank you. How are you?
7 close to appointments, and number 2, take back close. What does that mean?
Take back close is one of those strategies that sometimes realtors use to be able to kind of renegotiate something that they have to come back to, for example. So sometimes, if it's a no today, then you'll be able to kind of take it back and hopefully it's like sometimes like a psychological way of like take back. So I haven't really diagnosed that as to what that really means, but in essence, that's what I understand that take back means. Take back meaning that they said no yesterday, but now you're taking back the opportunity and turning it around.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yumika?
Great class, thank you. Going through the house with the seller, I have been coming across sellers who have been renting out their home. So would you suggest me asking them to come to the vacant home? And what about those who are out of town who don't live here?
Great question. For those individuals that are out of town and don't live here, then you still express to them that it's important for you to visit the subject property and how can you gain access.
Okay.
Now, when they say, why do you need to gain access to my property? I'm already telling you that it's in good condition. Then it's like, well, it's important for me to be able to understand the property I'm supposed to sell or rent. The only way for me to be able to best position and give you the best price suggestion is by me able to walk through the property myself. Because granted, I walk in with the lens of what I know today's buyers and or today's tenants are looking for. So I wouldn't want to just give you a general pricing and then be way off because maybe it might be a different experience when people walk through. Now, you want to interpret that the best way for the seller to understand that it's really for their favor. But for me, I just simply say I like to be in best position. The way that I'm best position myself is being able to walk through the product that I'm supposed to sell.
Okay, and would you suggest then, because I just did this for a DC property, they were going to rent it out and I walked through it with the property manager, but we ended up selling it. So the seller didn't really know the condition of it either because they've been having someone else look after it. So you're suggesting if they're local, but the house is vacant, we should ask them to meet us there to go through the home.
They don't have to meet you there as long as you gain access to the property.
Okay.
If it's one of those scenarios where the seller can't make it, they're out of town, or whatever the case is, that it's only you there, you want to take notes of anything that is a red flag. What does that mean? Put yourself in that buyer's shoes. If you know that ceiling right there looks wet, what is the ceiling? Why is this ceiling wet here? Right? And sometimes you'd be surprised. Oh, I didn't even catch that. Thank you so much. Like, it's just some things that you want to put yourself. The best way for us to identify how the buyer is going to think is to put ourselves in in the mindset of a buyer.
Okay. And the second question I have is for the net sheet for sellers, because I just went through this. Until I take a probate, short sales, and foreclosure class, I'm coming across sellers who are selling homes that from a deceased loved one. And the kind of little issue that I had was knowing what they owed. Do you have any suggestions? Because if they're not the original owner and they became a PR, is that, I haven't really known how to go, because I just found out with one seller that they actually owed more than what they thought. And there's no way for me to get that information until, the title company does their research. Is there you have any, or should I just wait until I take a probate class to dig more into that?
Definitely take that class, and I love that you already are getting that education to be able to really specialize in that field. But at the end of the day, remember when we talked about the book of vendors, having a title company as one of those book of vendors is not a bad idea, especially when you're going to, this is the title company I'm always going to be working with, and they know that. Then you can say exactly that. Hey, right? Hey, Yumika. Hey. Right, I'm hoping to bring a deal your way, by the way. But look, I'm working with the seller right now, and I would love it would really help me to find out what the current mortgage is on this. And maybe if they can't help you with their own tools, and they'll guide you to where you can find that. It really comes down to the subject property, because some jurisdictions, even if it is public records, they may or may not disclose it. The MLS slowly but surely is starting to get better at being able to portray such information. But in other words, I would recommend do your due diligence, and mind you, the title company falls under that book of vendors for you to have those top 3 that you can go to ask such questions.
Okay, thank you.
Of course, you're welcome. Hey, Joe.
Hey, quick question. Going back to the first question Umeka had about touring the property when the owner is not around. Say you notice some issues, like say you notice some water spots on the ceiling. Do you take pictures and send that to the seller and let them know that these are the issues, and if they need to fix it, they need to fix it, kind of thing? Or okay.
I take pictures because, mind you, I'm still trying to build rapport with them. And if you say something you can't back it up, and they're thinking, oh, this is just the person trying to get the dollar out of my pocket, right? So I want to I just like to position myself for that type of person that don't know me, and it's like, no, here's the proof, right? But hey, the good thing is that I didn't see that it was an active leak, but it's just there. So are you planning on addressing that, or what have you, right? But the point is that you definitely want to back it up with a picture, and also back it up with maybe a solution that they may have not realized that they can have, right? They thought that, oh, it's leaking, or no, it's no longer leaking, but you could just, whatever you analyze from that situation, I'd recommend for you to take a picture and write up notes.
Okay, got it. Right.
And sometimes before you reach out to that seller, you may have to have that GC. Hey, GC, is this a serious issue right here? Right. So use your the more that you follow in these vendors, the more they're going to realize that you're that realtor. Like I had one of my contractors call me today. Hey, Martha, you're just like I'm your GC, you're my realtor. So anyone I'm bringing business, it's a teamwork here. So in other words, you're positioning yourself to be that person, not only for your client, but to your vendors, because just like you're referring business to them, they're to be referring business to you as well.
Do you think it may be a good idea to take, I mean, if you have a very good rapport with your GC, it may be a good idea to take them along with you as you're looking through walking, or the owner may not like?
No, I mean, I don't think that everyone has that time of day. So I wouldn't want you to get comfortable with thinking, oh, I don't want to go without my GC. I think that the only time you should ever bring a GC with you is if your buyer is going to need a renovation loan or what have you, because that's going to help save time later on.
Okay.
The GC should only come if your seller has told you, hey, I do need someone to do my work. Yes, bring me who you know. But remember, anytime you're bringing someone, make sure that they're licensed and insured. And even if I know of a GC, I'm bringing at least 2 to 3 with me. Because as I tell my folks, I want you to have a general overview, as well as I want you to feel comfortable with the fees that they're charging you. So if I'm able to get you at least 2 to 3 different quotes, right? Because you're looking out for them, and that's what they're picking up on. And the more that your folks are picking up that you're looking out for them, then that's when they're your raving fans.
How do you go about finding like GCs and electricians and stuff, like for new agents who don't have any sort of like connections yet?
Google,
just look
top
up
10
okay.
top 10 general plumbers in my area, or whatever zip code, or whatever city and state.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Martha. Very helpful, to the point. Loved it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I am teaching next Wednesday's class. So I don't know the topic of that one, but next Wednesday, whatever that is. I was trying to find it so I could tell you guys. what it is to see if it helps any of you guys in your business. I'm teaching next week's class, which is working with buyers and sellers. Oh yeah, so that one's working with buyers and sellers. And you'll notice that next week's classes, I've taught that many times over the years. It's important for me. I always like to portray, when you're working with buyers, what you should prepare them for. Because as sellers are leaning towards your towards your guidance, of course, buyers are leaning on towards your guidance. And so remember earlier today, I briefly touched on about knowing FHA or VA. I'm going to dive more into what that means next Wednesday.
Got it. Awesome. Looking forward to it.
All right. Thank you guys so much for joining me tonight. And thank you so much for your positive feedback. I really appreciate you guys. And I look forward to seeing you guys around.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care. God bless. Take care.
Bye-bye.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.